surprise. So staff weren't exactly expecting this, but this is what happens when I'm in control of the PowerPoint. Every year we give out awards to students, college presidents, advisors, instructors that we've identified as being people that we can recognize in the association. But one group that we don't seem to recognize at the awards dinner is our staff. And so our cabinet got together and we thought of some things we could say about the staff. And we also prepared some certificates. The staff wasn't around to help us prepare these, and so they're made my way. Which means they're a little bit more flowery. But it's okay. And so we want to talk about each of the staff individually. First, Jonathan Miller, our director. Jonathan, you really know how to make communication work. That's something that it's a job that's sometimes ill-defined in companies and organizations, but I think that you've been one to define it well. You're always willing to provide quick feedback, and you're always willing to make sure the communication of our organization works well. One thing I've personally appreciated about you, Jonathan, is that I'm, in another life, very, very technically inclined person. And it was nice to have someone else in the office that knew what they were talking about.
He's the only one.
Justin, you do not count. Justin Googles MSCSA. Further, we work in an office that's very political. As you can imagine, we have one person that works in the office that drives a Prius and one that does not drive a Prius. And so it's been interesting to have one member of our staff that's a little bit less politically inclined if you want to break from the political discussions. And that's something we all appreciate Jonathan for. And lastly, Jonathan has an office, it's more of a half cubicle thing that's near Patrick, which is something that only some staff members can put up with when he's playing the Backstreet Boys. So, thank you, Jonathan Miller. We are recognizing you as the Communications Director of the Year. Next up, Patrick Christianer, our Executive Assistant. Patrick, you've been a great friend to me and to the rest of the cabinet. You were number 7. You're the only other president that works in the office up until now. And so you've been one I've been able to take advice from and to hear from previous experiences of another president. Patrick, you work harder than any of us can imagine, especially when it comes to these conferences. You're frazzled constantly. He's always willing, though, to get the job done, so we appreciate that.
He's hoping right now.
He's very, very knowledgeable because he's been with our association for so long, and he's always been able to give us great advice about what we've done. And so we'll recognize Patrick Christianer as our Executive Assistant of the Year. All right, next up, we have Jason Fossum, our Government Relations Director. Jason, without question, you are the best lobbyist I have ever met. I have learned more from you than I could possibly have imagined. This is one guy that is completely on top of his game. I maybe didn't quite expect to have to learn as much as I did about how the political games sometimes go. And so sometimes I think I was being clever and I'd figure out what was going on, but I always realized that Jason Fossum was one step ahead of me in knowing what was happening. And that was something I appreciated because I'd be nowhere if it wasn't for him. He was always willing to be honest with me. He was willing to tell me when I was wrong or when I was right, but he was always very loving about it. And he was very...
He's a harmonizer.
He is a harmonizer. But he was always there, and sometimes when we disagreed, our correlation was always to find out the truth, and we were always to make it work. He was someone I never had to bicker with. I never fought with. I never disagreed with to a large extent. We got each other. And so it is with great appreciation that we can award you as our Government Relations Director of the Year. Next up is our Jessica Medeiros.
Yeah.
Now, Jessica, we sometimes consider you to be someone that's kind of anxious, but you've actually been kind of my route for releasing my anxiety, and I do that by making you more anxious. Whenever I find myself in a position where something like her job was at stake, I'd make sure to throw out some weak comment about how I wasn't at all prepared for what I was about to do. So I always kept her at least slightly on her toes. But she, in truth, is always completely on top of everything. That anxiety, although I think it probably eats at her, it serves her very well in doing her job well. And she could always make my day with her sarcastic comments, or even better, her American mom voice.
Yeah.
Minnesota mom voice, sorry. And so, I really appreciate the work you've done, and you've worked so hard for us, but there's one thing that makes you stand out a little bit, in that you've been earning a law degree. And that's something that would be very hard to do for anyone else in a position where you're working full-time with a whole bunch of us. I mean, come on. So Jessica, thanks for your work. We're going to recognize you as our Public Affairs Director of the Year.
Review
We have
time.
one more person in the meeting. I'm not quite sure who it is.
Can we table this?
No, because I'm not the chair and I don't have to listen to tabling anymore.
Ow, he's
By the way, we have Justin Klender, our Executive Director.
Woo.
You notice at the GCs, he's usually the only one I ever let you clap for, and there's a reason for that. Because Justin, you're the best manager I've ever met. You've been someone who's been able to manage the office, manage the student, take care of everything that's going on, and always believing that everything fell back on you. And that's something that I have to admire because it's a very, very hard job. You're always on top of situations. Justin cares about students like you would not believe. At one point in this past year, I texted Justin. I said, Justin, someone said that the student was missing. They haven't seen him today. And within about 5 minutes, I get a call from Justin. I got the manager, I got the SWAT team, I'm about to break into the room. Breaching from leader. It wasn't quite that extreme, but it was. Within a couple of minutes, Justin was checking into where they were, because he cares about each and every one of you so very much. And that's something that would be hard for me. There's 300 people here, and he has to care about all of you. And if you're missing, he wants to find out what happened, and to make sure that something bad happened. And so, besides keeping bad things from happening from students, he knows how to make good things happen for our association. I think Justin has been the reason that our association has been able to progress over the past 5 years. And I entirely credit that to you, Justin. You know how to run an office, you know how to work with cabinets and boards and students in a way that they're the ones making the decisions, but they're making completely informed decisions because of you. And besides that, besides being this great leader, you're one of the only managers I know that's completely willing to get your hands dirty. He's our fix-it man in the office most of the time. And when there's someone who suspects a dead animal in the basement, he's the one that's going to go down there and find it. You'll find him out with the flashlight and digging around under cement. But what's more interesting about knowing he's a fix-it man is he actually has a toolbox in his office most of the time, which I always thought strange when I first started working in that office, and then I found out why later. So, Justin, it is with great pleasure that I can recognize you as our Executive Director of the Year.